Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. In case you're new here, my name is Maren.
And I'm Maureen. So in today's episode, a lot of white people are now coming to the realization, and they're also admitting themselves that they see how white privilege exists and that black people have been right all along.
Right. And we have to understand one thing, right? White privilege does not exactly mean that white people had an easy life. Rather, it means that the color of their skin was not the thing that determined or hindered them from getting successful, right?
Right, and that is what black people have been insisting all along, that the color of their skin is what has made it difficult for America to help them be as successful as their white counterparts. But what are we talking about, guys? Let's watch this episode and then you come back and talk about it. You can also let us know what you think about this episode in the comment section, and also consider subscribing if you're new to our channel. Let's watch.
I am white, and on both sides of my family, we do not have any massive generational wealth. My mom's father is the only one of my four grandparents who we got any sort of generational wealth inherited from. And 99% of the wealth that we inherited from my grandfather was from selling his house. My grandfather was born in 1926 in rural North Carolina, and he was a 6'3" white man with blue eyes. Other than being white, my grandfather didn't have that many privileges. He was one of like 7 children. His mom didn't even get to high school level education, and his dad never went to college. They were not privileged in most other ways that we define privilege, but he was a white male in a very, very racist country. What his whiteness allowed him to do was work his way through college. At the time, there were colleges that weren't accepting black people, and he was accepted to college as long as he could pay for it, and he ended up getting a law degree and becoming very successful, and again, never hoarded any significant wealth, but bought a house outside of Washington, D.C. in the 50s. In a neighborhood that was redlined. And actually my mom, who was born in the 60s, remembers in the 70s when the first black family moved into the neighborhood, because it had literally been sectioned off and realtors would not sell to black families. And my mom, who is 58 years old, went to a year of segregated school. So for all of you saying, it was so long ago, everyone has equal rights now, get over it. My mom remembers when the first black student joined her class in the 70s in Alexandria, Virginia. In 2015, my grandfather died, and we sold his house that he bought for around $100,000 in the 50s, and we sold it for $1 million. That money was divided among his children, and my family was able to get out of a lot of debt, and it completely reset my ability to go to private versus public school, my ability to afford tutors, my ability to become the educated person that I am. And it was all really because I have a white grandfather. Let me finish. Had my grandfather been black and had all of the other skills and background that he had, he couldn't have gone to the schools that he went to, he wouldn't have been hired in the jobs that he was, and he couldn't have bought the house that he did, that, 65 years later, put his family out of debt. So if anyone tries to tell you it's not that deep, it really is that deep. It goes so far back. Any small privilege that a white person has is probably, to some degree, due to their whiteness. And if you are a white person who has roots in the South, you definitely should have white guilt, and you definitely should be doing the work to understand how your privilege affects the people around you and how you can help level the playing field. And everyone tried to get all particular about these specific situations where a black person might have a privilege or a woman might have a privilege over a man. Those are isolated situations you're bringing up. We're talking about large-scale, mass, systematic issues. Now, yeah, legally, black people and white people should have the same exact rights and privileges. But they're playing catch up, because if my family, like I said, had been black, we would never have gotten out of debt in 2015. I would never have been able to afford the school that I went to and live the lifestyle that I'm living right now.
Privilege is characteristically invisible to people who have it. White people often believe that they have earned the privileges that they enjoy, or that everyone could have access to those privileges if they just worked hard enough. Now, privilege doesn't assume a life of ease and comfort. It is a statement of fact, rather than a label or a judgment. Unlike black people, white people are frequently unaware that they are members of the dominant group due to the privilege of being able to be seen as an individual rather than as stereotypes.
Most white people don't see racism. I know that it seems unbelievable because the signs are there if you look for them, but we don't see racism because we're spoiled. That's right, I said it. Here's how I personally illustrate this as an analogy from my personal experience. I have had problems with my feet all my life. And if I am having foot pain, all I can think about is how much my feet hurt. But When I found a style of shoes that were right for me, I realized I hardly ever think about my feet anymore because they don't bother me now. If something is causing you pain, you think about it. You think about how to make it stop. Or you give up thinking about it ever stopping and you think about how to endure it, how to live with it, how to fight it, how to minimize it. And that applies whether it's foot pain or racism. Most white people very rarely have to think about race unless we make a decision to think about it. And that's a choice for us. It's optional. It's not something we're forced to confront every day. As white parents, we tell our kids, if you get into trouble, find a police officer. They'll help you. Black parents would never do that. People of color give the talk about how to minimize the risk of getting killed by cops. If something doesn't hurt you, you don't learn to watch out for it. That is why white people don't get it when it comes to race. We walk through the world thinking our experience is the norm. So when Black people describe being followed, being profiled, denied, or dismissed, it doesn't line up with what we have experienced. So we assume that Black people are exaggerating, or too often we assume that it means that it's just not really happening. But the truth is, and I'm talking to white people here, racism isn't always blatant. It's not always a burning cross or a lynching. Sometimes it's a policy or a pattern that benefits us and makes us comfortable, so comfortable that we don't even notice. When it doesn't block your path, when it doesn't cause you any pain, you might not even notice that it exists. That's what white privilege is. Not just what you get, but what you never have to see.
The ultimate white privilege is always going to be ignorance. As long as white people have the ability to disengage with a conversation and it's not that deep their way out of any conversation when they feel like they're being emotionally triggered or discomforted or feel cognitive dissonance any type of way, that's going to be the ultimate privilege. White people are always going to have the ability to move through this world without really engaging in tough conversations about the system that we lived in because the topic of white supremacy is so emotionally charged with them because of the concept of whiteness. As long as they feel connected to the concept of whiteness, any criticism about the concept is going to bring them discomfort. So immediately it's going to become emotionally charged for them and they're not going to want to engage in conversation. And that in itself is a privilege. But it's also the ultimate form of psychological subjugation because no one is more subjugated under white supremacy than white people. Right? Your concept of being white is going to always tie you to the system. So you're never going to be able to fathom a world in which you weren't white. So while people of color, especially Black people and indigenous people, born a life that existed before white supremacy, you will never be able to do that because you don't remember what you were before you were white. Black people and indigenous people, on the other hand, are always thinking about a world in which their labor wasn't commodified, where they grew their own food, where shelter was free, where water was free. They could just go outside and hunt for animal products. Because of colonization and slavery, people of color are always going to have a homing beacon in history where life existed before white supremacy. For them, because they're still people of color. But because you identify with whiteness, that concept might not exist for you. The system is all you know. All you know is working for money. All you know is paying for water. All you know is paying for electricity. All you know is paying for land. When people of color have lived off the land for thousands of years. So there's always going to be this concept of a better life to people of color. That does not exist for white people. And that is the ultimate subjugation. You're the ultimate subjugated people under white supremacy. It is your psychology, your programming that keeps you in the life that we live. And that is why, even though the world that we lived in is so fucked up, white people fear changing it because they do not know a life outside of it. In their minds, this is as good as it gets. But people of color know that's not true. We remember a time where we built communities, where we grew food together, where we helped out our neighbor, where everything was essentially free, minus a little labor to get it and grow it. Not this fake system where we lived for money. Mind you, this system for most people of color has only existed for 400 years. There's always going to be a point in our mind where white supremacy did not exist. because we are not white and we do not identify with whiteness. That is not something that a white person can say. So for a white person, the ultimate privilege is always going to be identification with white supremacy itself. As long as you have the privilege of being ignorant and able to not engage with the conversation because of your emotional discomfort, you're always going to find a way to make the best out of this situation. That is the ultimate privilege. While Black people and people of color mourn a life that we could have lived, white people not came and subjugated us under their system, all white people think about is how to achieve and grow within the system of capitalism, inside the system of patriarchy and white supremacy. All of your goals revolve around improving that system instead of dismantling it. We are not even looking at history and reality from the same standpoint, and that's because you identify as white. The system is literally embedded inside of your identity. That is the ultimate privilege. It's ignorance of not being able to contextualize the idea from outside of yourself. That is a privilege. Also, the ultimate subjugation.
We really live in two completely different realities in America. In the same week that America is on the brink of a civil war, how is there a documentary out where Charlie Sheen is describing how to make crack cocaine to America? There's a new documentary out on Netflix about Charlie Sheen's life. And watching this two-part series, as the show kept going on, all I could think of is every white person needs to watch this in order to understand what we mean when we say you have white privilege walking through this earth. And white privilege, they translate that as your life is easy and everything got handed to you because you're white. And it's not the truth. It just means your life is not made harder by being white. There's several things Charlie Sheen did throughout his career which got him painted and labeled as a bad boy. Remember when he was doing 2.5 Men, that he called his boss and cursed him out, and they rehired him, and he was the highest paid actor on TV to this day, even though they knew he was a crackhead.
It's always been hard to explain white privilege because people get all up in their feels about it, as if like what you're saying is that because you're white, everything in your life has been easy. That's not what I'm saying. Or as if I'm saying that because you're white, everything was just handed to you and you never had to work hard. That's not what I'm saying. You had to work hard. I get that. You had hardships, you had to work hard, but like things worked out. Anyway, okay, so here's my thought. Blessed and highly favored. Hear Christians say that. I've said it myself. When a Christian says I am blessed and highly favored, they are not saying other people are damned and disfavored. That's not what they're trying to say. They're not trying to say that because I'm blessed and highly favored, I don't have to do anything. They're not trying to say that because I am blessed and highly favored, everything was handed to me on a silver platter. That's not what we're saying. There's still hard work involved. What we're saying is that it feels like somebody's rooting for us. It feels like there's always somebody intending for us to succeed. Someone who is wishing us goodness and victory and blessings. So white privilege is like that. Like when you're white, there's always somebody hoping you succeed. You are blessed and highly favored by the white supremacist environment in which we live. There is always the white supremacist system wants you to succeed. You are blessed and highly favored by that system. It doesn't mean that you don't still have to work. It doesn't mean that you don't still face hardships. But it means that like there's someone out there rooting for you in a way that non-white people don't experience. That particular blessing. They don't experience that because the God of white supremacy does not smile upon them the way the God of white supremacy smiles upon us. Does that help you understand what I mean when I say white privilege?
So guys, welcome back. Let us know what you think about the videos we just played here. And I feel like today's speakers really talked, and I feel like if anybody does not understand up to now what people mean by white privilege, that is somebody who just refused to educate themselves. And there was a time when you talk about white privilege, I'm not even talking about there was that time. Even right now, there's still people, especially the palm-colored people, who really refuse to accept that white privilege does exist. and we do understand that white privilege necessarily isn't the wealth that comes with the name privilege, but it's the what would you call it, the benefits you get because of the color of your skin. And these benefits, a lot of white people normally get them, and it doesn't even matter if it's in America alone. Even when they move to other continents, like for example here in Africa, these privileges are seen very loudly. And I'll give an example here in Africa, in Kenya. There was this lady who was married to a white person. She's Kenyan, of course, and she was talking about how she felt disgusted when she really realized how much privilege these people get to enjoy. And she was talking about an experience where she was coming back into the country from abroad. Yeah, one time she traveled alone, and the other time she traveled with her husband back to Kenya. And the first time when she was traveling alone, coming back, she was really treated very badly at the airport. And this is her home country, it's her motherland, right? She was being treated as if she wasn't even just the common decency of how you treat a person, and she's not even a criminal, right? And they even got to check her bags here, which is okay. You can check the bags because that is why the security is there. But she said compared to when she was coming back with her husband, they didn't even bother to open her bag to check what was in that bag. So assuming that she was indeed a criminal, that is how she would have gotten away with that crime, you know. Right. She says they weren't bothered. They actually cut them in a line. They didn't even line up because of the Muzungu husband. Muzungu is the name we give white people in Kenya, right? They were just allowed to pass, and they weren't even harassed. In fact, they were saluting her husband, telling him to welcome to Kenya and things like that, you know. So these are the kind of privileges we are talking about when they're outside the continent, right? But we have seen the privileges that example of privileges they talk about when they're in their own countries.
Right. And also one of the speakers said that white people do not realize the magnitude of racism because they don't even have to think about racism in the first place because it doesn't hurt them, and neither does it affect them, you know. And like the black community, the reason why they've had to address the same issue time and again since slavery and after slavery, it's because when you know where the shoe you are wearing pinches you, you will know exactly how to feel about the pain and what you will do to address the pain, right? But the one who isn't wearing that shoe will never even acknowledge that that pain does exist, you know?
Right. And guys, let's talk about how the first lady who was giving her accounts to how she witnessed white privilege, yeah? And she was talking about the only reason why her family, it was drowning.
Got a leg up.
They got a leg up financially, and they were drowning in debts. And the only reason they managed to get out of this debt it was because her grandfather, right? Her grandfather had a home that he had bought back in the 90s, and he had bought it at a value of 100,000, yeah. And at the time she was speaking, they had sold it for 1 million. And the only reason she was even comparing the situations, because it's not like her grandfather came from much, they also came from a humble beginning, you know. But he used, because of the privilege of the skin he had on him, he was able to go to colleges that black people were not allowed to go. You understand that? He was able to join these colleges. He was able to work jobs that black people were not being allowed into. And for those people who normally say black community need to get over racism, they need to get over whatever happened in the past, she has given a very good example of how her mother, right, was like she lived in that era, and her mother is not old, but she can still remember the first black pupil who went into their school.
And also when a speaker here spoke, I believed it was the old woman with the glasses, right? When she said that, they do also recognize that white privilege means that nothing is blocking their way to success, especially their skin color. And if you compare that with the black community, you know, more often than not, the black community is always told that they like complaining and that there's no hurdles to them.
They all have equal opportunities. Is what they say.
It's what they're told, that they all have equal opportunity. All they need to do is work hard. But right now, it's actually amazing that some white people have started seeing just how advantaged they are when it comes to creating wealth. And if and when you find yourself not creating wealth, it is not because your skin color is the one deterring you from attaining that success level you want.
Right, and these things have been proven, and even social experiments have been carried out for just for the white people who are saying that it's as easy as we all have equal opportunities. It's as easy as a black person just going out there and looking for work. You have to want it. You know, you can't talk like that when social experiments suggest that people with black names or black sounding names do not get jobs. They get past
not only jobs, even housing.
You know, just the basic things that you expect people to get in America. If indeed equality was a thing, black Americans are hindered from getting that because just the sound of your name, even if you're a white person, because even a white person came forward and said he had a black sounding name. So when he applies,
his name wasn't even from the black community. He's originally, his ancestry is from Germany, but his name kind of sounds like it can be from a black community.
So if he applies for jobs, he used to get passed for jobs, but if he went there in person, he used to get the job. So what does that tell you?
Yeah, he came to realize because his name sounded black, people weren't quick to giving him a job.
So you can imagine already there's so much hurdles for black Americans in America for you to say that or claim that the field is equal for everybody. It's not equal. The systems are not equal, and definitely something needs to be done. But it's a good thing to see a few white people discuss this, because only when you point the mirror at them can they see the true reflection, you know. And by that I mean people can claim that white privilege isn't a thing, but if you point that mirror back, like when she was talking about the things that they were able to do because of the color of their skin, yet in the black community, those are the kinds of things that your skin locks you out of, the kind of opportunities you get passed over for because of being black, you know. Right. So guys, I don't know what you have to say about this episode. I'd very much like to hear from you. Let us know your thoughts and opinion on the comment section, and we'll see you on our next episode. Thank you so much for joining us.